You may have recalled from one of the last exercises that I had mentioned some of the validation functions that PHP uses. There are dozens of functions that are commonly used to validate form data in PHP. However, of all of these functions, 3 of them are the ones that we use most often. So in one of the previous exercises, we looked at the empty function, which checks to see if a given variable has an empty value. A variable is considered to have an empty value if the variable has no value, or if it has a value of 0, or if it has a value of false. So in any of those cases, the function is going to return true. If those are not the case, then it would return false. And I had given you some examples of some variables, and we had talked about how whether they would return true or false. So the empty function is great for making sure that text boxes and forms have been filled out. And we had used that, as I mentioned, in one of our previous exercises. The next function that I want to talk to you about is the isSet function. The isSet function is almost the opposite of empty, although it does have a slight difference. So the isSet function is going to return true if the variable has any value, including 0 or false or an empty string. So if the variable does not have a value, then isSet is going to return false. And let me show you some examples of isSet. So again, here I have a variable set to 0, I have a variable set to something, and a variable set to just an empty string. If we use isSet on a variable, which is not declared right here, it's going to return false because there is no defined value. If we use isSet on variable 1, 2, or 3, they will all return true because they all meet the criteria of isSet. The isSet function is commonly used to validate non-text form elements, things like checkboxes, radio buttons, and select menus. We also regularly use them to confirm that a variable exists, regardless of its value. And then the final validation function that we use most often is the isNumeric function. And the isNumeric function is going to return true if the submitted variable has a valid numerical value and false otherwise. Integers, decimals, and even strings, if they're valid numbers, can all pass the isNumeric test. So here's some examples of isNumeric. You can see I have a variable 1, 2, and 3, and I'm setting them to various values. And if we run isNumeric, you can see if they would return true or false. So the first 2 are going to return true. The first one is clearly a numeric value. The second one is a string value, but it has numbers, so it's going to see it as being numeric. And then the third one is a string. So an interesting thing to note that is when you use isNumeric on a variable that doesn't exist, not only will it return false, but it's also going to generate a warning. And for this reason, we don't often see the isSet used along with other validation functions. So we wouldn't normally use isSet along with isNumeric. So in the next few upcoming lessons on the form that we've been working on, we'll be using some of these additional validation functions to see how they affect our script.